Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cosmic Owl Astrology with Louise Edington. I am the Wisdom Weaver and Cyberpunk Priestess to the Stars. I'm here with the week ahead forecast for January the 4th, 2026. Oof, another year already. To right through January the 10th, 2026. As usual, I have pulled cards. I will show you them, and then I will go through the astrology day by day. I also break down the transcript into a written post for Substack for those that just want to read the day-by-day guidance without listening to a whole video, because I know everybody likes different ways, so I try to please you all. Anyway, so what was I going to say? But before I do, I did a Cancer full moon video, and the Cancer full moon is on the 3rd, so before this week starts. And I talked about this card, the Exile. And I mentioned planets in exile being kind of hidden by the sun. Well, because I'm not a traditional astrologer and I don't use all the traditional terms, it actually really means when it's in detriment, in the sign opposing the sign it naturally rules, which is its domicile. However, my experience with planets when they are under the beams of the sun, particularly when they're behind the sun, as Venus is right now and Mercury will be all next week, they are kind of in their exile on the other on the other side of the sun. So we are left kind of feeling a little bit exiled from the norm, if you like, especially right now because we have Venus, Mercury, Mars out of bounds. Now, Venus will go back in bounds right after the full moon, but this energy is still really potent, and it does lead into what I'll be talking about for the week ahead. So I'm just going to read the last bit of the card. If you want the whole reading, you can go back to the Cancer video. So this says, the witch woman in total control of herself knows her soul's song comes from dropping down into the wound of her unbelonging. Now is the time to apprentice yourself to the lostness, to companion the longing to belong by asking what the longing wants from you. This isn't the time for self-improvement or development in the out there kind of thing, cutting away or transforming what makes you feel like you don't fit. Rather, it's time to ask the voice of the void what it is yearning to create in you. Yield to the ache, dear witch. The longing is forging a sanctuary for you if only you'll follow its voice. And that card really hit home for me. And with clients too, I'm noticing that a lot of people are like, this world's different. Where am I fitting? What's happening? Kind of thing. They feel in exile. As always, I talk about going within, which is what that card speaks to. Okay, so here are the cards for the week, January the 4th. We have, I'm not going to put them too close to the camera because I had to do another take because it made the camera go fuzzy. 4 of discs. Temperance. They're all nice cards, but this one particularly speaks to what's happening for most of this week. So I'll talk about that when I read the cards. The Sun. And this is actually the Rescuer. Okay, I'll just let you look at it for a moment. These cards are really quite difficult to show on the camera, but I do take a picture of all the cards to go with the Substack post if you want to do that. It's Cosmic Owl on Substack. There's a link below. All right, so let's dive into the week ahead. And again, it's quite the week. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say all that. And you know, it's beyond the new and full moons. We are in this intense period of change. So as usual, I just want you to look at the whole chart as we start. So we have the moon in Cancer to start the week. But by the start of the week, we have everything but Black Moon Lilith out of Sagittarius. If you remember, it was in Scorpio. A lot of these planets were moving together. Then we had a ton of stuff in Sagittarius. Now we've got a ton of stuff in Capricorn. And because this is mainly the faster moving planets, like Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Mars, but also some of the asteroids, we're then going to have a ton in Aquarius, then a ton in Pisces, then a ton in Aries. And this is very, very concentrated. And it really is this dying of this period, this age that we've been in, as these planets all move through the last signs of the zodiac and then all gather in the first sign of the zodiac. So it's about way more than like Saturn meeting Neptune at 0 Aries, though of course that's important. It's even about way more than all the outer planets changing signs, though of course that's also important. And I've just realized there's something I want to add back in here, so bear with me as we talk. I'll keep talking while I add it, but I want to add Haumea back in because she's such a big part of it. But this is another big part of it, this concentrated energy. And this week ahead really reaches one of the biggest concentrated points. Kind of begins on the full moon, because if you look back at that video, the full moon is at 13 Cancer Capricorn with Mars one side, Venus the other side. And with, we're moving towards Venus star point or Cazimi. We're moving to Mars conjunct the Sun. And then we move to Mercury conjunct the Sun as well. And as I said, at least on the full moon, we have Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the moon out of bounds. So by this point, January the 4th, 2026, at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time, we still have the moon out of bounds. Mercury is still out of bounds. Venus is back in bounds, but Mars is still out of bounds. Okay, now then, Mercury goes out of bounds later on the 4th. So things will start to wane because now we're waning from this full moon. But that doesn't mean it's less potent. Having this big full moon on the US sun, by the way, but also with these planets out of bounds, kind of sets the theme for the week. Okay, it's potent. It's kind of earth moving, could be earthquake kind of energy, literally and metaphorically. And to go back to what I said about that Temperance card, this is really a week to stay focused and stay in your lane and just, pull down the boundaries, Capricorn, because so much in Capricorn. Probably stay home quite a lot if you can, but just kind of stay out of, butting heads, fights, blah, blah, blah. It may not be that easy, by the way, because I've literally had 2 people already kind of come at me. And when I just said, no, I'm not having that, anyway, whatever. So people might come at you a little bit because people feel exiled right now. They don't know their place. They don't know what's going on. And it's very emotionally heightened with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer and this Cancer moon starting the week. So that's my kind of lecture for the start of the whole week. It's challenging week, but that does not mean that you cannot work with the energies. That's why I do all these posts all the time, because I believe we can work with these energies, by the way. Okay, so just onto the aspects then for the 4th. So we're coming down off the off the full moon. The moon is still in Cancer, but the moon's first aspect of the day is an opposition to Vesta, which is your inner flame, but it's also the flame of the state and the hearth. So the moon is looking at that and looking at this structural collapse that we're experiencing in all the structures of our lives in one way or another, and kind of saying, go within, and really sit that into that inner flame, to go back to that card. Then the moon will trine Saturn. Saturn is moved off its station direct degree, which was 25, is moving towards Neptune. Look at them, they're moving inexorably closer. And that's a water trine that's kind of building on the big water grand trines that we've had coming over the last few weeks, of saying, let it go, things are eroding, surrender, let go of self-limiting beliefs, all of those things. Then the moon will sextile Chiron. Remember, I talked about this all over again, that the moon will aspect these slow-moving planets over and over again. All the planets keep doing it as they change signs. But Mercury will sextile Uranus, which is now at 27 Taurus, which is the degree it will station direct at later. So it's slowing down, it's retrograde, but that's kind of the awakening coming we're seeing in some people. So pay attention. Then the moon will trine Neptune. Okay. And so, that's kind of more illusions going away, but also letting things go, and just not focusing on what you need to let go, just letting some things go, like the people I had to let go who kind of came at me, right? And then the moon at 8:43 a.m., the moon moves into Leo. And I am going to get it there because there is one aspect before this, but I just want to see if Mercury is back in bounds by this. No, Mercury is still out of bounds. So right before the moon moves into Leo, Mercury over here in Capricorn, whizzing along, now almost 10 degrees away from the sun, so about to disappear officially under the beams of the sun, along with Venus and Mars, and also Hecate, Pholus, and so much going under the beams of the sun, but just those for now. But this is Mercury will sextile Haumea. That's why I wanted to add her back in, because she is regeneration. So right before Mercury goes under the beams of the sun officially, the messenger or the trickster or the psychopomp as well, who moves between the worlds, messenger of the gods in many ways in Capricorn, takes this message of what we are regenerating. But this is going on inside all of this. Anyway, so on through the day, the moon in Leo will then oppose Pluto, right? And so we have a look deeply at what we are digging up, what Pluto is revealing of the detritus and the shadow within everything. And then the moon will square Haumea. This means Pluto and Haumea are heading towards another square in the spring of next year. So now the moon will activate them every time in these fixed signs, saying, what are we changing? What are we regenerating? And then Saturn and Vesta will aspect each other. That's more kind of going within to that inner flame and seeing what we need to let go of. But a lot of it's about what of these old, thinking these old structures worked and things like that. And then the Leo moon will make a lovely fire trine And trines can be a bit lazy. You know, these aspects, 120 degrees, you really need a bit of a push to work with them. And this, to my mind, is saying work with that inner flame, work on kind of making sure your needs are met so that you are more able to create intimacy and heal from the inside out. We are moving into a time where we realize it really kind of is all about us in many ways, that we don't need these intercessories. I'm not saying there should be no structure to kind of, support society, but as individuals, we have a choice as to whether we move in with intention into this new paradigm that we are doing. The moon in Leo says go into the heart and find who you are and keep moving forward. And then Mercury again will actually conjunct Hecate at the very last 11:24 p.m. Eastern. Now these both have psychopomp energy. So let me get that conjunct, because I can't believe how big this week is, really, to be quite honest. So I need to see if Mercury's back in bounds by now, because I think he is. Not according to my software, so maybe Mercury's out of bounds a bit longer, or maybe the Cafe Astrology, where I kind of just got a brief table from, used a different time zone. But anyway, by January the 4th, Eastern time at 11:24 p.m., Mercury is still out of bounds, but it's under the beams of the sun. It's exactly conjunct Hecate at 5 degrees 5 minutes of Capricorn. 5 is a number of change. It's also a number of kind of the media and speaking and things like that. And they've both got this psychopomp energy. They both move between worlds. In fact, I'm listening to a fabulous book I discovered yesterday called Hecate, and I can't remember the person's name, so give me a chance. I'm really enjoying it so far. I've only just begun it, but her name is Nikita Gill, and it's a great book on Hecate. It's written in very novel form, like Circe was by Madeline Miller. But anyway, with these being change bringers, psychopomps, the world is changing. The old world's dying. A psychopomp is one that accompanies people through to the other realms, death. But it can work in many other ways as well. It's very shamanic in nature. This is the triple moon goddess. This is kind of the messenger of the gods. This is a powerful message of change. What is going to emerge when all of this packed, tight energy hidden behind the sun ends? Anyway, so I'm just going to move it forward an hour, actually, so to take us into January the 5th. So January the 5th on Monday, we can see that the moon is in Leo. Now, the moon in Leo on Monday makes a lot of quincunxes to all of this, which are aspects of adjustment. I'm not going to go through them all because we'd be here all day. But, just know that we are being asked, and when I say adjustment, a quincunx, particularly with the faster moving planet this way, is again a kind of, it's an itch that needs scratching, and something needs to change. Let go of something, let go of something. So it's a week really about letting go. But then the moon moves on through Leo, and by 6 p.m. in the evening, 6:05, will oppose Chariklo, the spinner of grace, who's been holding space for us to write this new story. She's patiently waiting there for us to all do our healing and move forward. And then the Leo moon will trine Chiron. And Chiron is just station direct, right? So Chiron is at the station direct degree, has still not gained speed, moving very slowly. That's again looking at Are we doing that healing from the inside out? Okay. All right, so got through that day quite quick. So on to Tuesday, January the 6th. There's another big day, but first let's look at the moon. The moon will oppose Pallas Athena, the strategist, the pattern seer, particularly in Aquarius. This is starting to see the big picture, pulling all those threads together. She and Chariclo are still quite close together, so we're bringing our heart and our emotion down into that and pulling these pieces together and saying, we don't want that anymore. We're going to write this new story, keep talking about that. But almost at the same time, the moon trines table turner Eris, saying, what more tables do we need to turn? Or what table? You get the idea. That wasn't good grammar. And then the moon will square Uranus too. So actually this is starting to, make a bit of a fixed T-square here. And fixed signs do not love change as much as mutable signs, for example. Even cardinal signs. Fixed signs are quite, harder to change. But with Uranus there and Pallas Athena there, this really is saying change is coming, so deal with it, kind of thing. So just kind of work with it. Look at things differently, radically differently. And you'll see people starting to behave radically different than you thought was possible. I think of Marjorie Taylor Greene as an example. Sure, yes, she did terrible things. She's not that nice a person, but now she is speaking out about what the apparent president said to her in the last phone call they had about the Epstein files, where he said it would hurt his friends. Whoa. He didn't deny that what's true in these files is true. He didn't do any of that. He said, you will hurt it will hurt my friends. What does that say? I'll leave that up to you to think. This is the kind of awakening people are getting. Okay. And then the moon will sextile Hygeia, which is preventative healing. But then we have the biggest aspect of the day, which I will come back to. Before I talk about that big aspect, the moon will move into Virgo at 11:56 a.m. and then we'll start to trine all of this. And trines really take conscious action, okay? It's like, okay, now we're in the waning period of the full moon. I look at all this energy. What do I need to let go of institutionally, structurally, rule-wise, things like that? Okay, so the big aspect of the day is the Sun conjunct Venus. Now, you guys all know that I work with Venus. I have a Venus retrograde Heroine's Journey class coming up in September, October 2026. But this is the superior or exterior Venus star point at 16 Capricorn, conjunct Mars. This is a big one again. Now, the Venus has a direct or superior or exterior conjunction that is kind of like a full moon to a retrograde Venus star point 4 years earlier. That was at 18 Capricorn. Now, right after that 18 Capricorn one, which was where Venus emerged as morning star, the Ukraine war began. Russia invaded Ukraine. So think back over those 4 years, particularly if you have placements in this area. This is kind of like Venus's full moon. This could be a time of releasing things that began back then. So another releasing phase. But as I keep mentioning, we now have Mercury, Hecate gets left behind. That's okay. Mercury, Pholus, Venus, Mars under the beams of the sun. And Mars is said to be exalted in Capricorn. But on January the 6th, Mars is back in bounds, according to this. Yeah. And Mercury is still in bounds. So I think I misspoke. Mars goes back out goes back in bounds late on the 4th. Okay, sorry about that. Mercury, not till January the 15th. This is extraordinary. So Mars is back in bounds by the 6th. But the January the 6th date, of course, is a bit of a memorable day for many of us. And, also things might come back to roost around that period too. Because what's the US election cycle? 4 years. Okay. Now, that, of course, that doesn't line. We're a year into the presidency. So maybe what was happening a year into the last presidency will start to, emerge. Okay. So we'll see. But anyway, either way, this is a big star point. Venus star points are really important. The Venus star points act like invisible clocks, moving gradually backwards through the signs. Every 9.5 months, Venus has a conjunction with the Sun, but every 18 months or a bit more, Venus will have a retrograde star point, and then in between there will be the direct star points. This is a huge thing. I teach it in classes, I teach it in my membership, in videos, but you can also get Ariel Gutman's book, who did a lot of research and wrote the book on the Venus. She called it the Venus star point. Other people have called it other things. I call it the star point because of that. We all have a prenatal one, but I'm not going to go into that now. Collectively, this is a big deal. And this is about halfway through Capricorn. So this is kind of, now the Venus star point in Capricorn, because it always moves backwards through the signs, is going to start heading that way towards Sagittarius. Spends just over 100 years in each sign. But all that to say, this is going to hit anywhere that's, really kind of got something very close to that degree, or like a major aspect, like the US Sun is opposing it, is going to feel it. And it's going to say, this is another indicator of things ending, because now Venus is going to move that way with all the other planets, and so is the Sun. And Venus is going to emerge not for quite some time. In fact, on the Aquarius eclipse in February, Venus will emerge from under the beams of the Sun as the evening star, which is the letting go, the more love goddess star. It's the Hesperus, it's the evening. We are moving into the ending of something. So again, another indicator of endings. Okay. I didn't really mean to teach the whole Venus cycle in this, but anyway, you get the idea. So I'm just going to move it a day on to January the 7th. On January the 7th, the moon is in Virgo now. The moon did conjunct the south node, or will do, after a trine to Mercury. Sorry. The moon will trine Mercury first. Mercury's now under the beams, kind of getting messy. I always feel as like when Mercury and Venus are behind the Sun from our perspective, they're kind of getting information from out there, beaming it through the core, the Sun, which is the core of our solar system, and our being, really, into us here, each person on Earth. But that's how I kind of feel into it, because I work with these energies very shamanically, I'm going to call them. I'm not going to call it intuitively. It's more shamanic than that. It's how they feel inside. But anyway, Mercury is also the guide for this south node, which is another release point. So just, saying. But then Mercury over here will square off to Ceres. And if you've read my book, you will know that they both have a boundary crosser kind of energy of moving between the worlds. And this Mercury is moving towards Ceres, and Mercury is the most closest to the Sun personal planet, and Ceres is the most outer personal planet. I will not be told otherwise, that she is not a personal planet now. So what that speaks to me, because Mercury is faster moving, is that we are being pulled within again, within all these personal planets, to look within. Okay, we're being asked to look at our core being, our ideas, our thinking, our communications, all that kind of stuff, our love nature, our relationship to money, each other, all of those kind of things, our will, our drive, our energy, our push, and there our needs. Okay, and what nourishes us. Go within. Can I keep saying that enough? Okay, later on January the 7th, the moon will, as I said, conjunct the south node, but then we'll try and fold us as well. Remember, that's integrity, cause and effect, kind of taking an inventory of where you've been in or out of integrity, but we're also taking, our so-called rulers and the people that made the man-made rules about their integrity too. So, and then Uranus over here will trine Vesta, bringing us another kind of inner awakening. Sometimes about the world out there, the flame, the state, the hearth, but sometimes just within the body and within how we feel about it. As within, so without. As the soul, so the universe, all of those things. Then the moon over here will oppose asteroid Lilith, who I have not got on here, but that's fine. But interest, actually, I'm going to put her on because I'm like, oh, look at that degree. So asteroid Lilith, I've started using almost more than Black Moon Lilith because she's just been very involved and really speaking to me. So now, why am I going to look at this, you said? So here she is on there. Look at the degree. This is where the degrees were, where the nodes were on the Gemini full moon that we had on December the 4th. That was making a mutable grand cross. So something from that time, again, is being echoed and bringing change. And a reminder that it's the number of the witch or the divine goddess, the divine feminine. Again, I've talked about 13 loads too. All right. So then on January the 7th, Pallas Athena, she will sextile Eris. So this is strategy about how we shape these tables up and how we fight for those that have been marginalized and outside, and because we do not need those rules anymore, right? Okay. And then the moon in Virgo will actually try and make the first major aspect after the full moon with a trine to the sun, and then of course we'll trine Mars as well. And look, these are all lining up at this 17-degree mark, but then we have another big aspect. If I didn't do Venus conjunct Venus, 9:43 p.m. on January the 7th, Venus and Mars met. Okay, now I'm just going to whiz the chart back a little bit because I talked about that retrograde period, the retrograde star point when Venus was retrograde 4 years ago. So I'm going to go back. So we had a Mars conjunct Venus February the 22nd. You don't need, well, that was on the US South Node, but anyway. Then, so it's about every 9.5 months. Then we had March the 6th, 2022, and that was at 0 Aquarius, another big one. Then we had February the 16th, 2022. Look at this. This was right after the Venus retrograde when she'd moved direct and she was emerging as morning star, okay? And so they were at 16 degrees, which is where the star point is now. And this is the divine masculine and feminine. So if we go back, so they just met the once. Okay, so the two met there, whiz back, now they meet again. Oh, I'm going a day. Oh, that's no good. Sorry. So we'll go back through for a day to 2026, January the 7th, 2026. So that's another indicator of that 4-year thing. This is a big one. And we've just had the Venus star point at 16, but really all this is happening together. And they were at 16 back then. Now they meet at 18 degrees, which was the degree of the Venus star point back in 2022. So this has been a whole period of looking at the divine masculine, the divine feminine. And somebody yesterday told me about a book called The Feminine and the Masculine Revisited by Gareth S. Hill. Now, I've long said this. Most people work with Jungian thing of the anima and the animus. He has a different take on it. He said, there's a natural kind of flow of opposites within the psyche between the divine masculine and feminine, which is nothing to do with actual biological gender. So it's something I might have to explore again, but I've long talked about this, that, we have the divine feminine in the masculine and the divine masculine in the feminine. So this is another sign that it's starting to integrate, to come back together. And it began 4 years ago. Okay. Well, it probably began before that, but this more integrative period, okay, ready with all these endings and beginnings. So I hope that makes sense. This is a lot this week. On to January the 8th. Well, I am just going to move forward a few hours. So we're into Thursday, January the 8th. And we can see Venus is still at 18 here. We're still with Mars. But now the sun is moving closer to Mars, but they're not there yet. We have the moon finishing up in Virgo, and the moon will oppose Saturn and then oppose Neptune. More letting go as these two finish their journey in Pisces. And we're letting go of old beliefs as well as the structures in many ways. Okay. And this reliance on, we need them, we need these intercessories, we need these leaders, we need this to look after us, the big daddy kind of complex. We do not need it. And then Mercury as well over here, getting closer to the sun quickly. Mercury's 9, sun 17. Mercury will sextile those nodes again as well. So, we're moving more and more towards this interconnectedness in just so many ways. Okay, then the Virgo moon will trine Uranus, a bit more shocks, a bit more ahas, and then we'll oppose Neptune, and then we'll move into Libra at 7:05 p.m. and that's the only there's no lunar aspects for the rest of the 8th on Eastern time. But Mercury will conjunct Pholus. So Mercury is the psychopomp, but also our ideas, our thoughts, language, all of those kind of things, and conjunct Pholus, which is, the lid comes off. We're changing our perspectives, we're changing our ideas, we're taking our inventories of maybe where our part was in this, but we're also again taking the inventory of what's happening out there. You can see the moon's in Libra by that point on Thursday, right? But these two meet at 11 degrees, which I love because that's what a gateway number of enlightenment. We are becoming enlightened, and just, just look at how everything is now moving towards the end of Capricorn, ready to move into Aquarius. This is all happening very quickly, really, because it's the personal planets. Okay, so January the 9th, we're almost done the week, and I know these are a bit long. I kind of look forward to the day where I just do simple, like, oh, this is a nice day, just do this. We've got a little while, but it'll come. Maybe I'll just retire then. Whoops. I did hit the trine instead of the sextile. So on January the 9th, the Sun, still in Capricorn, catching up to Mars, the Sun will sextile another centaur, Nessus. And Nessus is that one that's been revealing the abuses of power, revealing the toxicity. Well, you know what's going to happen, don't you? Big old light on it again, with all of this here about the structures and the institutions. More going to come out. And the moon, it now in Libra, as we mentioned, will trine Pluto, and looking at the shadow yet again, and then we'll start to square all this lot. Okay, and it's the closing square, and the moon in Libra seeks balance and justice, and it's coming to the structures, it's coming to the rules, and it's heading towards the last quarter moon, which is the crisis in consciousness, crossroads in consciousness phase. Amazing. Okay, so I'm not going to go through each aspect because it's just madness what's happening. So the Sun, though, will then conjunct Mars. And out of the three, Venus, Mars and the Sun, Venus and the Sun move the fastest, so they will start to move away from Mars then. But this is Mars Cazimi, the Sun. And it's opposing almost by exactly a degree Jupiter. And Jupiter is closest to Earth as well because it's kind of in the middle of its retrograde. When a slower moving planet opposes the Sun, it's about at the middle of the retrograde, and it's closest to Earth, perigee as it's called. It's also square to Chiron, really, I'm going to say all of this. So this is a cardinal T-square with all of this moving this direction. This is real earthquake energy. All of this is at 19 degrees. The Sun and Mars are at 19 degrees. Venus is still at 19 degrees. This is 1 beginnings, 9 endings, makes a 10. So it's new beginnings. And this is the divine feminine. But this literally is earth moving energy. Stefan Burns, who many of you watch as well, says the likelihood of earthquakes either then or leading up to this time is huge. And other activities, he looks at it every day, but this is shown in this being an earth sign and this being a water sign, so there could be, kind of some big tsunami kind of thing as well. I'm not predicting it, I said could, but this is going to be energetic as well. Earthquakes, like things being shown and things being broken open and us saying, no, this is crazy. I'm just shutting my door. I do wish my husband would tell me when he's on the way home so I can shut the door when I record rather than leaving the door open for the cats. But anyway, on to Moon in Libra. We'll start squaring all this, as I said, and now moving towards this. The moon will also oppose Ceres. We have another good look at, are we making our needs, and are we really stepping forward, saying I'm going to make sure my needs are met. Okay, then Venus will oppose Jupiter. Exactly, Venus is the first one to reach the opposition to Jupiter. Let's show you that because it's on her day as well. So 12:34 p.m. on Friday, January the 9th, Venus Day. Venus gets to 20 degrees, the number of the divine feminine. I like that there are 11 minutes as well, because it's a gateway number, as you know, and will oppose Jupiter, who is closest to Earth. So again, earthquakes, possibly about women too. I don't think these Epstein files are going away. I know there's a lot of skepticism about whether they will ever come out, but you know, I don't think I think they will, one way or another. Okay, so I'm not even going to go through all the moon aspects to this. I've kind of talked about that already. I want to get on to the last day of the week. The sun will oppose Jupiter at 3:42 a.m. exactly. Jupiter officially reached perigee about 24 hours before that, but again, this energy is just carrying on. This is huge. This is really kind of intense. Earthquakes of all kinds, and I do think it's going to involve women a lot, and you know, those who lead us. So, and then on January the 10th, Mars opposes Jupiter. Can you see how close all these are happening together? So 3:42 a.m. the Sun opposed Jupiter. Then 9:25 a.m. Mars opposes Jupiter. This is just massive, right? Okay, Mars could be the males who've been dominators. Mars in Capricorn can be very dominator, control, all that kind of energy of control and domination, at least. Wow. Okay, at the same time as well, the moon is squaring it as well. So the moon comes in and makes this cardinal T-square, forcing change, but really it's a cardinal grand cross because Chiron and Eris over here, and this is forcing change. This is massive. And then we have the last quarter moon, which Dame Rudyard called the crisis in crossroads, the true crossroads in consciousness. Crisis means crossroads, really. It's always a crossing. We have a last quarter moon every month, but this last quarter moon is here at 20 degrees, making that cardinal grand cross, and all the other things are still happening. So the cardinal grand cross is almost exactly square Jupiter as well. You know, this whole week, I think, is going to be full of earthquakes of one kind or another. That's why I said it's a week to really kind of just stay in your lane, try and stay out of headbutting with other people, let other people do the headbutting, unless you want, unless they feel it's really necessary. And the moon kind of makes all the aspects. So we'll square Venus, then we'll oppose Chiron, then we'll oppose Eris, and then we'll trine the strategist Pallas Athena. And really that's it for the week. What a week. But let's look at the cards, because they kind of give the same message, really. So, okay. So where's my book? One day I'll remember what these specific cards mean, because they just really speak to me at the moment. So first card we pulled, Four of Discs, is wealth. The word for this is I am value. This is a 4, which is a number of stability. And it says, there's a couple of quotes. If you have much, give of your wealth. If you have little, give of your heart. I've always believed, and I still believe, that was Rumi. I've always believed, and I still believe, that whatever good or bad fortune may come our way, we can always give it meaning and transform it into something of value. Now, I read this as, look where that yellow dot is, right within you. That's where your value is. That's echoing that message again of going within and doing that healing from the inside out. Okay. Then we pulled the Temperance card, which is I am unity, and it's called the dissolving. So if a union is to take place between opposites like spirit and matter, or the divine masculine and feminine, blah, 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 the conscious and unconscious, bright and dark, and so on, it will happen in a third thing, which represents not a compromise, but something new. And again, echoing that message of staying in your lane, this happens within you first. Okay. Now then, the sun. I must sound like a broken record saying, do your self-care, go within, all those things. But here we are again. The sun, our center. This is I am joy. This is finding that sense of joy at your core. This is illuminating your core and doing only what brings you joy. And the rescuer. Let me show you the rescuer, which incidentally is a 44 card. So 4 is again that coming within, getting on all 4 arms, legs, like a table chair, and being stable, being very rooted. Anyway, killer empathy is real. Most women never identify it, let alone unravel its suffocating grasp on their lives. While empathy is a superpower, it can be a double-edged sword. It enables you to be considerate of and cooperative with others. But on the other side of empathy is the rescuer, who, in her compassion, is determined to save those she loves and that which she cares about most. This will lead her to sacrifice her time, energy, and other resources in the name of fixing. Saving, solving, helping, and rescuing these people in situations she feels have great need. This side of empathy cuts deeply into her life force, often resulting in the hemorrhage of time, vitality, and creativity. A witch, however, knows that her empathy must have boundaries. She helps those who help themselves, jumping in to assist rather than save or fix. She trusts that others have their own guides and their own soul's code to assist their journey, just as she does. She's willing to resist the impulse to caretake or rescue, allowing others the opportunity to grow, expand, and develop their own agency. Now is the time to resist the urge to manage another's experience and keep your precious empathic energy in balance. Ooh, that one hit hard too, in a good way. I just see it already happening. By the way, the shadow of Virgo energy is servitude and overgiving and overserving, and that's that South Node in Virgo. So, where have you done that? Turn it round. Save yourself first. Put your oxygen mask on first. Beating the same drum yet again. Peace out. Love you all. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment. Bye.